Good. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the Co-Star, the official newspaper of the Borough of Belmar, and the Asbury Park Press. A notice of this meeting was posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building. Take roll call. Councilwoman Donovan? Here. Councilwoman Kinney?
Here.
Mayor Buckafusco?
Here.
Councilwoman Rondinero?
Here.
Councilman Levis?
Here. Okay, would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence for our troops and their families and our first responders. Thank you. We're going to do a workshop, and we're going to have two presentations tonight. One from our redevelopment attorney, Joseph Bauman, from the firm of McMahon, Scotland and Bauman. And after that, we will have a little presentation by Jim Orris, our engineer from the firm of Remington and Vernon. What I think we will do is the council, just so we're not facing the back, we're going to move down to the tables, and we're going to kick out these four gentlemen who are sitting there. We're going to sit there, and we also have agreed that for these two presentations, at the end of their presentations, the public will be permitted to ask questions. Okay, in the same way we do when we have the resolutions, and at the end of the meeting, just state your name and address, and you can ask any questions about the presentations. Okay, so we're going to.
All right, thanks, Mayor. Members of the public, council. So this will be an attempt to bring everyone up to speed on where we are in the redevelopment process for Belmar. So let me sort of start from the beginning. When the firm was brought on to assist Belmar in trying to sort through what has been happening in the redevelopment area, one of the first things the mayor and Mr. Kane asked us to do was to start unpacking a bunch of the agreements that had been already approved and executed. One of the other things that they asked us to take a hard look at right away, and I think it was in large part due to Mayor Kevin Kane's experiences elsewhere, was to take a look at where we are with our affordable housing. Right? So the concern on both those fronts were, are the agreements valid? What obligations do we have under those agreements? And if there are projects that we don't think are consistent with our vision of Belmar, what can we do about them? And then on the affordable housing front, the concern was that we were vulnerable to what we call builders' remedy lawsuits. So municipalities have the ability to protect themselves against a developer coming into town and having the court impose upon the town a certain amount of density or particular project in order to meet its affordable housing obligations. You protect yourself by going through a process that we've since engaged in, designed to identify how much affordable housing can be built, and have a say in how that process goes. So early on, right in the beginning of the process, we filed with the courts to get ourselves into the process where we were going to be in a position to have a lot more to say about how our affordable housing obligations are met than we would have had 9 months ago, 10 months ago, before we began this process. So we're in the driver's seat. We're not the only ones in the car. The special master, the affordable housing folks, and at least 3 interveners are participating in the process, which is their right. They're so the developers who we're in the process of doing projects or pitching projects that either we rejected or for other reasons we actually didn't plan to make those projects inconsistent. Those developers are now interested in the process. So that entire effort is ongoing, and we'll be giving you regular updates about that. But the borough's already taking steps to amend the Seaport redevelopment plan, to adopt an ordinance to provide for affordable housing opportunities and contributions to affordable housing trust fund. We've sort of begun ticking off the boxes. And then over the course of mostly this year, we will probably be back in front of the mayor and council with actual projects that will begin to address our affordable housing needs. And those will be projects that are represented by the interveners. That's this whole parallel path that we've been undertaking, again, entirely driven by a goal to have smart development happen with input from the borough, with you in the driver's seat in terms of the process, and in an attempt to meet your constitutional affordable housing obligation. On the other side of the process, we were faced with a number of agreements that were either already executed or negotiated, projects that have either begun or were close to completed. And we started to go through those agreements as well. And tonight on the agenda are two resolutions that address, amend two of those three transactions that we identified early on. And so I'm going to first sort of walk through with you those projects and what the resolutions and the amendments that are on the agenda do to them, why we're amending those already executed agreements. So the first one we call Eastport of Belmar. This is at 508 Main Street. It's a project that contemplates 14 townhomes in 2 buildings, parallel to one another, with 5,000 square feet of retail. And then there's 12 diagonal parking spaces along 6th Avenue. So I think everyone is familiar enough with Belmar to know generally where I'm talking. And 5 public parking spaces on Main Street. That project, again, it was approved in the waning hours of December of 2022, built into it a tax abatement into the redevelopment agreement, which limited tax increases to the borough portion of the taxes to 12.5% on approved. So that negotiated pilot in a redevelopment agreement, we wrote them a letter and said that's not enforceable. That means it's ultra virus, means it's not legal. The borough cannot comply with it because it didn't follow the proper procedures to get a tax abatement. If you want to do a tax abatement, there's 2 ways to do it. If you're doing a 5-year abatement, the borough has to have an ordinance in place that allows for it, and then you have to have another ordinance approving it. If you want anything from 6 years to 30 years, you also have to go through an application process. It has to be a renewable entity with dividends. So there's a whole bunch of boxes that you have to check, none of which happened. Right? So we initially took the position with the developer that the entire agreement was voided, with the goal of getting them to the negotiating table. They came, and at the end of the day, the amendment that we have on the table for the borough was to eliminate that provision from the redevelopment agreement. So we won't have to fight about it in the future. They would, I assume they were here, they might disagree with my opinion about whether or not it's enforceable or not. I'm comfortable that I'm right. In any event, we're going to avoid all those problems because the resolution on the agenda tonight is in agreement with the redeveloper to eliminate the tax exemption for the Eastport project. So that project will go forward. There'll be 2 buildings. It will be as designed, 14 townhomes, 5,000 square feet of retail. But it will no longer have a tax abatement. So check that box. The second transaction that we came across that had a similar situation was, it's called Newman Ventures. It's at 807, 809, 11th Avenue. This is 8 for-sale townhomes. This one actually was an agreement that was executed in 2019, right? So it's been around a long time, they had final site plan approval in October of 2022. So this is one of the projects that were much further along in the process. But we went through the same sort of effort with them to let them know that we thought that this had a 9-year abatement built into it, that we also told them we thought was invalid. And I will say, both of these developers were very cooperative through the process. They didn't, at the end of the day, whether they agreed or disagreed with us, when we told them the only way they were going to go forward is if we amended the agreement to take out the pilots or the abatements, the tax abatements. They all agreed. So I don't want to suggest that they were difficult in any way. Both of these developers and their projects, each of them, when we told them that your choices were, we were not doing it at all, or you were going to agree to eliminate these tax abatements, they all agreed. So I feel like we've resolved, so two of the three boxes we have resolved, and that resolution is also on tonight's agenda. So the council is going to consider amending both of those redevelopment agreements to eliminate any tax abatements to those two projects. The third project, just is not for any other reason other than going to do so much work at the same time between the mayor and the governing body, everything else that's going on, is Sackham Pond. This is the here next June 2020. The project's already constructed, pending a certificate of occupancy. That project also has a 10-year tax exemption, which accepted their project to 10% of what the taxes will otherwise be going up over the 10 years. We've explained to them as well that we don't think that is enforceable, and we don't plan to honor the provision. We, again, are in the preliminary stages with that developer. But our expectation is that exemption will, we take the position that we're not going to honor it, so we're going to give them a full tax bill going forward. And we'll let the borough know that that's working. So that's sort of some of the challenges that we've been undertaking through redevelopment. Two of the three resolved, and the governing body and the council will consider those resolutions tonight. The third one, whether it's resolved or not, we've advised them that we've given the borough opinion that the exemption is not enforceable, and it should not be granted. That's from our firm, and I believe the borough will take our advice on that. So those are three. There are various other, again, projects that I think we're going to be coming to you periodically, particularly between now and December 31st, because the court has us on a very short leash to try and resolve our affordable housing obligations and come to agreements with the interveners, special master, and fair share housing, which are both all sanctioned by the court. And that process is ongoing, but again, those are all negotiations that we're doing simultaneously, and we're just going to present them as we settle over time, in a way that we believe will thread the needle of meeting, not overbuilding, meeting our affordable housing obligation. It's a needle, and it has to be threaded. We have no choice. We can't go anywhere but through it. But we feel we have a team of professionals, the mayors and council are very motivated. Mr. King is all over us to get us, to the best place we can for the work. And again, that process is ongoing. So that's the report for now. I'm happy to answer questions. Council.
Would anyone on the council want to ask any questions before we open it up to the public?
The council's already asked us a bunch of hard questions, so I'm not surprised they don't have any more for us. We've met with them in closed session, and they drilled me plenty hard. So.
Okay, if anyone from the public would like to ask a question, now's the opportunity.
Tom Zilberger, 1000 River Road. Sir, about the affordable housing thing, I'll just make this statement real quick. Of course, it's illegal, it's unconstitutional, it's a lousy thing all the way, but this is New Jersey. What do we care about stuff like that? This is what we do all the time, wipe our feet on the Constitution. But anyway, if you have 100 units, how many of those units have to be affordable housing, as everything stands now?
20.
20! that's gonna change the demographics of this town, isn't it?
I don't.
Especially if the project from facing Route 35 and going all the way from 10th to 8th Avenue gets approved. That's gonna be a shot. That's really gonna be a shot.
Well, I don't know. I don't think so. I actually don't think so. I don't think 20, firstly, affordable units are people with jobs. They need credit checks. They're part of your community. They could be, they're
Yeah.
Board,
go ahead.
I don't think it's such a bad thing to have affordable housing. Joe Bauman, my personal opinion.
You
I
know what it
think
means
it's
to me? It means that people who can't afford to live there are subsidized to live in a place that they can't afford to live.
For us,
Okay,
it's
that's my definition.
precisely. No, you're right. That's
Yeah,
what it is.
but this is New Jersey, and we wipe our feet on the Constitution every day of the week.
At least in New Jersey, the court believes the Constitution requires you to do this. So it's the exact opposite. It's complying with the Constitution.
Can I just ask a question? Mr. Baumann, do you know about what is that median income requirement for low?
So it's 80 and 50% of AMI, and I don't have my chart with me, but I think we may have just sent it.
You did, you
I
sent
did,
it
and I
over.
didn't bring it, so.
I mean, this is not very low income. We're talking people who make about $70,000 a year. So I don't know about you, but that, you know, it wasn't that long ago where I thought that was a decent income. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other members of the public?
Yeah, very much.
Let me just have Rita, she's on the way up.
I actually have two questions,
I'm not
if
married,
that's
so put your
okay.
name in, does it matter? People supposed to?
You put your name and address.
Sure, my name is Rima and I live on 2A Street in
Hey, Rima.
Belmar. Hello, how are you? I actually have two questions for you. The first part being, from what I understand, this might be a silly question, but basically those contracts went into agreement illegally. So I'm wondering how they were approved to begin with.
They're approved by resolutions of the governing body. What was, they knew or didn't know, I have no idea. The agreements, we took the position, and I will continue to do that, the agreement was ultra virus, but at the end of the day, we settled on just eliminating this one section. That was objection.
Thank you. My second question and comment as well. As far as affordable housing goes, I would be one of those people that would qualify for that. I've lived in Belmar for 13 years, and it is something that I've actually mentioned to Jerry previously, our mayor. My rent, just to give you an example, when I moved into Belmar was $945. I'm at $1,800 at this point. 10 years ago. I'm sorry, this summer coming will be 13 years. Yeah. I work very hard. I've worked since I was 14 years old. My parents migrated here, so I had no money coming to me, no generational funds. And I would qualify for that affordable housing. And I love Belmar. I know a lot of their residents that permanently live here that own houses, and I contribute to the community very, very well. So I do hope that that's something this administration pushes forward, because I know that I would be one of those people that would benefit. And I do hope that it's something that we can see forthcoming maybe in the next year or two. So what does the timeline look like on that?
So the court is holding us to a short leash. We're gonna try and wrap up all our agreements by the end of the year. How fast they get in the ground under the current economic conditions is to be determined.
Okay.
With any luck, they were starting next year and then 2 years, so you're probably 3-4 years out.
And should it move forward, how will people like me be notified of the opportunity?
So that's actually a really good point. We're going to work really closely with the borough to make sure that this is published far and wide. You can't restrict those units to residents, but you can work really hard to make sure the residents know about it.
All right.
It's
Thank
a lottery.
Thank you so much.
Just one thing I wanted to add, maybe people don't realize, the interveners are developers that currently wish to build projects in Belmar.
Right.
Right?
Yes,
So-
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Right, so they're proposing certain projects, and that has to be reviewed by us and the court and the intervener and the master. The court has appointed someone as a master to basically oversee this process. So that's what the interveners applicants are, they're developers who are looking to build properties in Belmar.
Yeah, so there's a judge who's gonna ultimately decide. There's interveners who are arguably our adversaries. There's the special master, so it's a court-appointed person who actively participates in our negotiations for the purpose of bringing us all together in a way that makes us agree. And then, there's us. So it's a multi-party process.
Questions? Mrs. Kramer?
Thank you, Mayor. Eugene Creamer, Fourth Avenue. Actually, I took a quick look at both of these resolutions. First one being the Newman project. And that appeared to me that, on a quick read, that the developer did not want a payment in lieu of taxes agreement. Am I correct on that?
So the agreement, they have one now, and you'll see there we cross it out because now they've agreed to take it out of their existing agreement. These are amendments to a much bigger agreement. And so what they've agreed with us that there will not be a tax abatement. But they did have one until we did it. If we don't approve this amendment, it's in there.
Okay. When you say tax abatement, you actually mean a payment in lieu of taxes?
Correct.
Okay.
They would still pay tax, some money, but it would be less than full tax. Correct.
They would pay, could be assessed like regular property?
Well, they're all different. So on this one, it was, they were gonna assess each townhouse unit at $100,000 instead of their true value. So I don't know what a townhouse might be, $750 million. So they would assess that at $100,000 per unit, and the assessment would increase 12.5% a year for 8 years. So hypothetically, if it was worth $1 million, it would only be assessed at $800,000, and then next year it would go up 112%. Until at the end of 8 years, it would go back on full taxes, full assessment.
Okay. And the reason that the borough may do that is to encourage developers to develop. And
Yeah, at least in this case, the developer's gonna do it anyway.
Okay, but ultimately, after so many years, those property owners, new property owners, will be paying full
Yes,
assessed value, taxes on the assessed value,
yeah.
including school taxes, correct?
But at the end of the 8 years in this case, or 30 in somebody else's case, they would be paying full taxes, correct?
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
I couldn't, on the other project, which is Eastport, and I guess that was 83 pages long.
So there we did an amended and restated because we made no changes, so it's a little longer. It's not 83, but it's 40, you're right.
Okay, but they're not making, they're not looking for a payment in lieu of taxes?
They also had one in their current deal, and we are executing a new agreement that takes it out of the deal.
Yeah, I see that, and that's why I raised the question. Excuse me. The wording, and this was on page number 2, right at the front. Whereas the parties desire to amend certain provisions in the original redevelopment agreement to, among other things, delete section 5.3 containing an invalid ultra vires tax abatement.
So in that project, 5.3 also set the assessment for 7 years at $100,000 per unit instead of the true value. And for the commercial space, it assessed at $200,000. So it's followed a similar formula, 1 year less than it had for commercial. So then that section 3 gets redlined, doesn't appear now in the new agreement.
Yeah, actually, in the new agreement, it says section 5.3 is now reserved.
So that's arguably lazy. way of not having to rewrite the whole stupid agreement and just put reserve. Otherwise, we'd have to renumber the whole agreement. I don't like it. I don't like my lawyers do that in my firm, but it's a perfectly acceptable process for lawyers.
Yeah,
But it always, there's cross references, right? So if you change, if you delete 5.3, then 5.4 becomes 5.3, then every time 5.4 is cross referenced, you gotta make sure you do it right. So people just, for ease of drafting, just call it reserve, and it makes it quicker to change the document, less lawyers' time, less money, arguably.
yeah, I did not have a copy of the original.
Oh, yeah, I see
agreement,
what you're saying.
so it just left me out in the wind as a, well, you're eliminating this, and then when I go to the, I go to the section, and all it says is that that section is reserved.
Right, I think that's why the mayor has us here explaining it, to make sure that people understand it. It's easier to talk about it than it is to read it, so that's probably why.
Okay, no, I.
Good point.
I understand that. I guess what I don't understand here, though, is that the entire borough has been designated as an area in need of rehabilitation.
Right.
Okay, and certain areas are areas that have been designated as areas in need of redevelopment. Okay, and at one time, and I think the borough can do this at any time with the stroke of a pen, is offer tax abatements for rehabilitation. In other words, the designation is townwide from border to border.
So you can, yeah, so you can only do 5-year tax abatements in areas of need of rehabilitation. So throughout the town, wherever there's an area of rehabilitation, the town could set up, many towns have these, an ordinance in place that if you meet this criteria, you can actually just submit a piece of paper and you get exemption. For example, towns where anyone that's going to put an addition on a commercial building might exempt that for a certain period of time to encourage downtown commercial to improve their site. It's very common in New Jersey. It's a much different type of abatement. It's only for 5 years. It's designed for those kind of projects. There are some that are for bigger projects, also 5 years, same statute, where they would agree to pay in year 1, 0 taxes on the new project, then 20, 40, 60, 80, till they get to 100% at the end of 5 years. Those are called 5-year short-term agreements. Any rehab property, if the town had that, we don't, but we had that in place, you could offer it to anybody in town to qualify. And again, it's not that uncommon. The 30-year, which is a longer one, anything longer than that, is under the long-term tax exemption law. There you have to be in area need of redevelopment, so it's a much smaller group, and only those could qualify. In that case, you have to submit an application. Anyone can submit an application. The borough can't not let you submit an application. We could decide not to follow through on your application, which anyone had the right and be available to submit an application. Then the borough decides whether or not they think it is required. It's the test. There's tests that has to meet, and then they go through the process. But most people don't apply unless they think they've had a lot of conversation with the borough and the lawyers and everyone else that it would actually qualify. Qualify meaning it meets the tests. So there's certain tests you have to meet in order to qualify. Pilots are in place primarily to incentivize developments that can otherwise be built. We do them all the time. Like I'm not, just because we think these 3 pilots were not properly approved doesn't mean as a policy matter I would be opposed. I couldn't recommend to the this governing body, and they told me I don't care, but I can see myself recommending to this governing body a pilot in a particular situation where I think it made sense. Even to address some affordable housing. Again, they're in charge, I'm not, and they may say I don't care, I'm not doing it. But there are times where pilots make sense. Absolutely, New Jersey do them all the time, and they are a tool that can be used properly. But you also have to do it properly. You have to follow procedure. You have to make an application. The application is an open book application. It describes exactly what you're building. It describes what your pro forma, your financial plan, where you're getting the money to build the project, what are your rents going to be, how's your construction costs. You have to do all these things, and then we typically, with the financial consultant, analyze it all, and then we have a negotiation about whether it's the right number, should 10% of annual gross revenue is 15%, the whole process should increase over time. It's a very complex, highly negotiated process. But they do make sense in certain circumstances, and I could even, again, see myself recommending to this mayor and governing body someday that it would make sense in a project. I would propose that because I think they get value in New Jersey. These three, they literally just didn't go through the process. So I couldn't even tell you whether they needed it or not, because none of the work they went into would go into a typical private application that ever happened. So who knows? I will tell you that when you push back and said they can't have it, agreed. So maybe they don't need it.
Yeah. Well, my own personal opinion is that there's never been any Belmar property that's actually been blighted. But in the aftermath of Sandy, there was an identified need, or I should say that it could qualify for an area in need of rehabilitation. And I believe that designation exists, and that you really cannot erase that. Likewise, in other words, the entire borough is an area in need of rehabilitation. I guess my question to you, is there any way that, now, I understand that the mayor and council have control there. In other words, they can, allow a tax abatement using the rehabilitation status for 5 years, okay? With nothing much more than the stroke of a pen, because the area of the.
Well, I mean, it's an ordinance. I mean, it's not a stroke of, it's not that simple, though.
But the
They can agree
rehabilitation,
to it. I
the
guess.
rehabilitation designation is already in place.
Right.
So that if the town saw an area, or even had an idea that a development would be super well suited, they could offer a tax abatement of up to 5 years.
Correct.
By what we.
Correct.
What
They
we-
could. They could. Yeah.
Instead of trying to designate an area in need of redevelopment.
Correct.
Okay.
The area near rehab designation has to do with the age of the infrastructure, nothing to do with the individual properties. Right? Area near redevelopment is property specific. Area near rehabilitation is the water source system, or I think it's over 50 years old. So it's a certification by an engineer. It's pretty much, it's again, a function of the age of the infrastructure. It's not the particular properties. You got I'm sure there's people on that, right, that they're still in the area near rehab because of the townwide designation of the infrastructure that supports them.
Okay. I have one quick question on, I don't want to carry on here.
I think that was the goal of the governing body, for you to carry on. I think he wants to answer all the questions.
Yeah, I guess I have a question on the affordable housing. I didn't write it down. I'm trying to recall exactly what it was. But in the affordable housing ordinance that we have in town right now, the title or the definition of developer is extremely broad. In other words, if you own property in Belmar, you are a developer. Is that your read on, or?
It's definitely designed to capture, the developer is sort of a nebulous term, right? Because developers own their own property. One of our developers here actually intends to live in some of the units, right? So developer doesn't distinguish between someone who's going to own it, or going to rent it, or going to sell it. None of those, that term really doesn't distinguish. It just is meant to say you're developing something, you're building something. So if you're building a second family, I mean, if you have a lot and you have a second home, and you can build a new brand new house,
You would be subject to paying a affordable housing development
you have to
fee.
contribute to our fund.
Okay. For instance, I own a piece of property in Belmar. I get a simple building permit to put a swimming pool in the backyard. I get the building.
I don't think that qualifies.
Excuse me?
I don't think that qualifies. I have to go back and look. I think it's if you're building another structure.
Anything, it's my understanding that any development that the tax assessor makes the determination
Yeah, I have to go back and look. Swimming pool, I'm not so sure, but I hear you saying.
and bumps up the assessed value of the improvements on the property,
Yeah.
okay?
We'll get back on that one. I don't think we'll qualify, but okay.
Well, it could be just an addition onto the house, for
That's
that
it.
matter, okay? And that would be, say, for instance, get back to the swimming pool. The assessor bumps the value of the improvement on my property by $20,000. And so it's only that increment that would be subject to the affordable housing
Yeah, that one,
fee.
I gotta take a look at that without answering. I don't have the orders in front of me.
Okay.
I'll get an answer
Well,
back.
well,
And
thank
then
you.
I'll make sure you know the
Thank you.
answer.
Okay.
Vicky Renner, 1106 D Street. Okay, so you brought up 3 of these developments, which it sounds to me like you found something good, that now the town will be receiving funds that we weren't going to receive. Is that kind
I
of?
think that's true.
Basically-
Yeah, we're gonna get more money than with others, yes, correct.
Okay,
The
so,
town, county, and the school district.
okay. So basically, these 3 projects that you found, you stated were, 2 of them had just been semi-recently approved, and the 3rd one has already been built, but all developers agreed to what you said, because whatever was drawn up was stated that it wasn't done legally.
I advise them that, I advise the town that they're not enforceable.
Correct.
So,
My question is, how far back can you go?
I'm not actually, well, I'm certain that the mayor and council will have me overturn every file there is. I don't know if there are that anymore. I don't think there are
The 2
anymore.
big ones that come to my mind, and when it happened, I think, and maybe I'm wrong, the Marina Grill, was that like a 50-year or some kind of crazy, I have no idea what that was.
On our list.
Many moons ago, but that was a very sweet deal. And the other sweet deal, I think we sold property on 9th Avenue, no, that would be 10th Avenue, for about $100,000. The lot was sold for $100,000 or $150,000. And then they put up all those apartments close to the condos by the train station. So those are the 2 giant things that just stick out like a sore thumb, that if these little things, if you caught this in this amount of time, something like that was, I don't know, it was 50 years, 20 years, whatever it was, but it was odd.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they were done properly, I wouldn't try to Monday morning quarterback 20 Monday morning quarterbacks later.
No, if it was done properly, I'm
Yeah.
saying that's great, but if you
Yeah.
found 3, I'm saying, I think you should just keep digging. That's all I'm saying.
Fair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
How you doing?
Hey.
Sean DeSoma, Oakwood Road. So I walked in a few minutes late, so I may not have understood exactly what you're saying. So you're saying with some of these development projects that essentially you were able to write up a legal opinion, then go to them and say, we need to renegotiate. And they said, okay, with nothing else attached? Just, okay, we'll give up our pilot?
Yes.
Good job. Nice work. Usually there's, negotiation, maybe some other terms
I
back and forth.
mean, we had some
Affordable
other
housing.
ideas of things we'd like, for example, but they're almost all asks on our part. I think what they got from us is we're gonna let them go forward with the project, right? So, I took the position that they had no agreement. That the provision is ultra-virus, so the entire agreement would be thrown out. That, they disagree with me. They said that, the agreement has a severance clause and only that position should be thrown out. And I said, well, we can figure that out, or we can just amend it and call it a day and you go to the project. And they said, oh, that'd be great. And again, I want to reiterate, these developers were all, they were very agreeable. They worked with us. They didn't give us a hard time.
And how many affordable units were attached to these discussions? None? Okay. What is our affordable unit shortfall right now?
So we don't have that, so the process right now is, we're trying to figure that out. Like,
Yeah.
what's our obligation to build, how many units, that's the challenge. There's something called a vacant land adjustment, so you could, time yourself.
No, it's good for everybody.
So, you go through and take an inventory of the town, and you figure out how much could we actually build, as opposed to what our obligation may be. And then we'll reach an agreement, but this has nothing to do with developers, fair share, and the special master on what our obligation is. So that negotiation is going on today. How many units do we have to need to comply with our obligation with a vacant land adjustment? That's a parallel negotiation. And then once we come, while we're trying to get that number, then we're gonna try and figure out how to put that number into at least the 3 projects that are on the table. So I don't have that number for you today because it's still in negotiation.
Got it. So we don't have the number, but the goal is to have this kind of wrapped up by the end of the year with fair share housing and,
Yes.
got it. And what triggered the discussions and the litigation? Because my understanding, we did. So the borough reached out proactively.
We filed with the courts.
Got it. And now the goal is by the end of the year to have all of our affordable housing
And
figured out.
honestly, it was, I think, Mr. Kane was concerned, because I think he may have even heard rumblings, that there might be some builders remedy lawsuits in the offing. So, because we came in pretty strong in the mayor's direction, to change the Seaport ordinance, for example, right? And we reduced the densities that got people's attention. So, there's a little, I wouldn't call it a race to court, but we wanted to be in a position where we had something to say about it. So we initiated the legal proceedings, and we knew the interveners would come, because that is their.
That's how it works, right?
That's how it works,
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So-
where we are is where we expect.
So we wanted to trigger that so that we could then come up with our settlement and then figure out the number and then build the number as soon as possible.
Right. And I think, maybe, except for John, we meet our constitutional obligation to provide affordable housing for people. I think that's also viewed as a goal, an important goal
Sure.
of the policy.
Some would view it that way. Thank you very much.
Some would view that.
Some would view it that way. Thank you.
I get it, yeah.
Any other questions from the public? Okay,
All right.
thank you, Mr. Baumann. Next up is Jim Morris, our borough engineer.
So, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay? Excellent. So, I just wanted to just give a brief update on the status of the fuel dock. I think most of you know or have heard that we had a situation with 2 of the 3 fuel station areas. Essentially, what has happened due to wave action, deterioration, those floating docks have basically been compromised. One of the middle floating dock, much of the flotation has been basically disseminated. So there's a concrete shell, and within that shell is a foam flotation. So they worked to hold each of these 10 by 10 sections of dock up. Once that was compromised, then they sank, and they're actually very heavy. These docks are concrete with a wood border, and there's reinforcing, and the way that they're built, they're self-supporting, so they float and they can be bolted together. They work very well, and the extra weight actually makes them much more stable than, say, a wood floating dock or other solutions. So the borough has a good floating dock system. It's just that these 2 floating dock sections, the flotation has been compromised. So once we were alerted by the mayor, council, and public works, we consulted with the manufacturer. We came up with a solution that would provide probably a 2 to 3 year solution for the borough with regards to refloating the docks, if you will. So we, through the manufacturer, the borough has purchased floats. So these floats are not filled with foam. And the way that these floats would work is that they're going to be filled with water, and then they're going to be placed under the docks that are compromised. They'll be secured, and then they'll be filled with air. So you'll have these vessels filled with air, which will float and support the docks. And then again, they'll be secured with framing, with cabling and bolts, so that they can't move. But quite honestly, once they're in place, the water pressure really holds them in place. They're a solid, hard plastic, so they will hold up over time. And we actually have a contractor, Albert Marine, has been retained to do the installation of these floats. And I believe they were scheduled to come Tuesday, but because of the weather and wind and everything, the tide that's been occurring, I believe the current schedule now is for Thursday. I just got that information earlier today. So they're planning on coming on Thursday. They do have divers that have already been in the water to do an underwater assessment of what and how these floats can be floated and put into place. And we're hopeful that by late this week or early next week, we'll have the floating part of the docks back in place. And then Mr. Musto can reach out to the company that we contract with for the fuel supply, because once we found out they were compromised, to Mr. Musto's credit, he made sure that there was no product that could go back into the water. So we actually had to shut that off and drain the lines. But once we have everything back in place, we'll be able to put those two fuel docks back into service, which again should be at least a 2 to 3 year solution. So hopefully that explains kind of where we're at with the fuel dock situation. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
It's funny that you brought that up about the fuel dock, because I brought up the marina, but when the marina was passed, Marina Girl, I was on the planning board for 20 years, and the Board of Adjustments, I never understood, and maybe again, you guys are going to have to research back, but where the location of our fuel dock is, there have been fires there. Well, it's caught on fire over the years. There's been a couple of accidents, different things. And the way Pier 9 goes out and goes to the left, people are sitting like very close in proximity to the fuel dock. And I never understood with the laws that we have, how that is allowed for safety. So that's just something, as long as you're looking at it, I know you're doing the engineer part of it, and obviously you're not gonna relocate our docks into another place, but if that seating is too close, that has to either be altered, or maybe if you're redoing the dock, then the dock has to be moved away safer. But those two things together, I think, are too close of a proximity for safety. So just, it just brought me to mind when you mentioned it.
Thank you for bringing that up. I will certainly look into that. I'll have a conversation with our fire officials with regards to minimum safe distances, but we certainly want to make sure they're safe.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the public?
I don't know if it still exists, but there was a situation at the docks where, because they were right up against the bulkheads, that they would trap refuge. So they would, it just result of what was put in there, I guess, and the spacing. And I'm just wondering if that's a continuing issue, or when you put these in, if you can do something about that.
Good question. I think if I understand the question properly, so the floatables is what you're saying, wind up getting trapped between the bulkhead or seawall
Right.
and the floating docks.
Yeah.
What we're doing now is simply just replacing what we have now.
Mhm.
So if it tends to trap material there now, it's not gonna change that.
Okay.
But in the future, we can look at maybe some additional screening or something that could limit the amount of floatables. The problem is the wave action.
Yeah, I just want to make you aware of that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. And so how soon after the dock is repaired will the gas be able to start pumping again?
It depends on contractor availability. I'm sure Mr. Musto can reach out and pre-schedule, if you will, with the vendor that we use for the fuel lines. I would tell you, I would guess within a few weeks. I can't imagine it would take more than that.
And how long is how long is this process gonna take?
I would say by the end of this week or early next week,
okay.
so 7 days or so. There's, I think, we have a total of 6 floats. I know we're gonna use at least 4 of them. And then we'll have 2 in case this happens in another area. The reason being is what we see is that this particular, where the floating docks are, there's much more wave action. And that wave action and the constant up and down, Public Works actually goes out and tightens down the docks on a regular basis. But I think the shifting and just that wave action deteriorated those floats. And once the foam got impacted by fuel, fuel and foam don't mix and it just disintegrates it, right? So once you lose that structure inside these shells, then it's done. So we have, if this were to ever happen again, we're gonna have 2 extra floats that we could potentially use, like just say for example, if it happened on the northern fuel dock, we'd have the ability to fix it, not have to wait for materials.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No more questions on that? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Okay, we're going to continue with the work session. Just wanted to let the council know, and I think you already know, we have signed a contract with the electrical contracting company to do the needed repairs in the 11th Avenue Firehouse. It was signed today, and there's a resolution on tonight approving that contract. Okay, so I think the next step is for Mr. Kane and fire officials and Billy to work out what have a pre-construction meeting so that we can lay out step by step what the contractor is going to do and what kind of access he needs. So that was good news. I'm trying to think of anything. Does anyone on the council have anything for the workshop?
Oh, wait, I was gonna ask about this.
Oh, no, I was done.
I just wanted to make sure that the firehouse is gonna be complete, like the whole electrical is gonna be done in the whole house, right? Like we discussed earlier.
Correct, yeah, yep.
Have to use the mic.
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
So-
Yeah, everything that is faulty, it basically goes from one panel to the next, including the generators. There's a complete scope of work from an engineer, contractor, so electrical engineer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry to miss our meeting last week. I did watch it back, and both Councilwoman Donovan and I followed up with Ms. Renner regarding finding some local resources for our homeless population. So I wanted to thank Ms. Renner for her work in helping the individuals who she came across. I also spoke to Chief Scott, our business administrator, the mayor, and the Belmar Public Library about how we can handle and what kind of resources we need for our folks when they come in and they desire help. I also reached out to Candace Sparks from Monmouth County ACTS. She's the coordinator. The ACTS part stands for Assisting Community Through Services. I will be creating a pamphlet on our current resources for the homeless population, and we'll distribute it to the library, borough offices, businesses around town. In the meantime, the county sent me, which you will see now at Borough Hall, and of course I have it right outside of our door here. I don't know why that's going now. Monmouth County Social Services, it has their information, telephone numbers, and all sorts of programs for outreach and support, including domestic violence, targeted population child care, boarding home services, emergency repair. So this will be at all of the, you'll see it at Borough Hall, right as you come in, by the gym. Also, the police station has a few to give out, and also in Spanish. And then a resource guide for families who are having difficulty, whether it be with homelessness or difficulty making ends meet. So as much as I can come up with as far as our information, yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Sorry.
I don't think that's the same.
Whatever information I can get, I will make sure to include, and I'll call the numbers ahead of time to make sure that you're reaching someone. One of the issues that is a kind of a gap is that you can call this intake number and they'll say, please leave a message. Well, that means you need to have access to a phone. So if you're a person who does not have a home and does not have a phone, then you need to be able to be with someone who does, for even possibly from 8:30 to 4 o'clock. After 4 p.m., you can dial 211, and you will eventually talk to someone. That doesn't mean that they have housing available, but you will talk to someone at that line. What I have recommended for the library, because they can be a very helpful resource, and I know Lewis there helps a lot of people with programs, is that if they do need to make that call, okay, well then maybe they can ask Lewis, can I stay around the library so that when that call comes in, I'm able to find that resource. So I thought that was really an important kind of gap that I think Belmar can address, and I'm hoping to talk to NJ Transit to see if we can have something there at the train station as well, to let people know what their resources are. We don't have a lot here in Belmar, but Monmouth County does. So I will follow up on that. Additionally, last Friday, the mayor, business administrator, and I met with the Belmar Historical Society. They would like to create a Belmar Historical Commission. It was great meeting with them. This would help move us forward in protecting Belmar's history. A commission will help Belmar have more teeth in fighting against projects such as the destruction of the bank building. We may have had more teeth in being able to save that. We should see an ordinance in the near future presented, and I hope this will be supported by council, as the Belmar Historical Society has done so much for us. I think that's what I have.
Anything else?
Anything else for workshop?
Yeah, I had one more thing. I know there was a lot of concern about recycling being moved from Monday to Thursday. Now that the summer's over, I was just wondering, maybe April or Billy, do you know if there was any concerns? Was there any problems? Did we have any big issues with the whole thing? Okay.
No, I'd say it went pretty smooth. Yeah, I'd say it went pretty smooth. We didn't receive anything.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? We can then move on to petitions. Are there any petitions?
No, I did not receive any.
Okay. Approval of minutes.
Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the September 12th meeting?
A motion?
Second.
Councilman Donovan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Kinney?
Yes.
Mayor Buckles?
Yes.
Councilman Rondenaro?
Abstain?
Councilman Levis?
Yes.
Okay, reports of council. We'll start with Councilwoman Donovan.
I want to start by talking about the Run for the Fallen. That was last Saturday. We were all there, and I think we all agree, that it was an incredibly moving event, and it was an honor to be there with the families. I will never forget being there in the rain and watching all the men and women run through those winds for that sacred duty. So I want to really also thank Claire and Sharon Hayner and Sandra Caputo for really getting that message out to the public and making sure people were there, and of course to the Hook and Ladder who were there with their equipment as well. And transition from that, October 27th, we have Trunk or Treat coming up. So put that on your calendar, and we also have another recurring event on November 25th for the SPCA, this is the Monmouth County SPCA, with a doggy puller plunge at DJ's, which is a fun event for everyone. I was there at the planning meeting, when Commissioner, Citro came in to talk to us about it. So it looks like it's gonna be a really great event. We had that last year as well.
Councilwoman Kenny?
Thank you. Okay, so ADA, the next meeting is Thursday, this Thursday, the 28th, in the library, 6:30. The last Shade Tree Commission meeting, we discussed, one of the things we discussed were the trees that were best suited to grow in Belmar. So you can see the list of recommended trees preferred by our arborists on the Belmar website under the Shade Tree Commission if you're thinking about planting a tree in your yard. Recreation updates, winter basketball signups are happening now, K through 1st and 2nd through 8th clinics begin in November, and the season starts in January, so check out the website for signing up for basketball. Belmar Youth Club, signups are happening now, Youth Club starts November 18th, and then Councilwoman Donovan also addressed October 27th is the trunk or treat. Registration starts at 4:30, judging is at 5:30, and the trunk or treat actually starts at 6. And Danny White and the Kids Rock Band is also playing, so come check them out. Around the schools, Belmar Elementary is having Belmar Elementary has back to school night this week, 6:15. I think it's Thursday night, And the Scholastic Book Fair is happening now. And St. Rose Grammar School, they are also having a trunk or treat. That's October 20th, Friday night. And they're also October 6th, next Friday, they're doing a movie at the grammar school. It's Shrek. So that's actually at the grammar school parking lot. And then finally, St. Rose High School, next Friday, October 6th, is their annual walkathon. All students and faculty attend, but this year the mayor and council have been invited to attend a prayer service, and a proclamation is going to be read supporting the centennial anniversary of the high school. So if you can make it, come out. It starts at 8:30, and the walkathon is to follow. And then Wednesday, October 18th, St. Rose High School welcomes families for their open house. Please check out their website for more details. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilwoman Rondinelli?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hook and Ladder is hosting this Saturday their fundraiser for the fire department at 10th Avenue Burrito, so please check that out. The Belmar Historical Society has the history of diners in New Jersey, October 3rd at 7 p.m. at the Taylor Pavilion. That's going to be wonderful. I just wanted to shout out to John Walsh, who did a fantastic job for our San Gennaro festival, and thank you to everyone who made that such a success. I've gotten a lot of positive comments about it. I wanted to thank our lifeguards and water safety. We've had a lot of rescues recently. Please, a reminder, I know we have the sign on 35 saying, no swimming if we don't have lifeguards on duty. That doesn't mean that there aren't local Belmar people who are getting calls every day to go out to the beach and sometimes have to save lives. So thank you for those who do that, and please let your friends and family know this is not an okay time to get out there and be in the water. Let's see, Belmar Housing Authority. The elevator was down for 2 hours prior to the storm this weekend. It was repaired and up and running after. Thank you to our Belmar Police Department for checking out the situation there right away and being on call during the storm for the residents in that building. There were no other issues with the storm other than some minor leaks in the building. The elevator will have a major overhaul in getting modernized and up to code. Executive Director Paul DeSantis met with the principal engineer, and it will take 2 to 4 weeks for the drawings. And if approved, it will take 8 to 10 weeks for the equipment production. It's very fast. I will keep you posted as I know more. The Belmar Public Library had their Board of Trustees meeting September 18th. We had a guest speaker, Leslie Naughton, who discussed strategies for a strategic plan. They want to nail down their mission statement, vision, and 5-year plan. We also met Deb Graham, our new librarian, and she showed us around the library. If you haven't been to the Belmar Public Library recently, please go. It looks so beautiful and organized. Everything's sorted. It looks like a brand new building inside. Every book is correctly cataloged. We weeded out a lot of the morning dated books. There's a new section for graphic novels and also a new section for college and career books coming. And also a careers without college section. So I thought that was really wonderful. Please take some time to just go ahead in on the library, even if you haven't been in there, you haven't taken out a book in a while, it's worth going in and seeing what's new. We had a report that we had an increase in residents signing up for library cards. So if you're one of those residents, thank you. And if you're not, go and get your library card. Louis Polito had a report on our programs. The summer reading program was a big success. The library is partnering with the recreation department, so they have chair yoga and really wonderful programs now at the Taylor Pavilion. People are loving that. Every day there's 2 fitness classes for the community. We also have author time. Today we had Mary Brennan at the library with her book about teenage suicide. Then we have Lily Unleashed, which is The Evil of Puppy Mills, and then Mike Bennett, Belmar native, which all books take place in Belmar, October 11th at 6 p.m. All 3 will be videotaped and posted after. They talked about live streaming, but figured that they decided that the quality wasn't that good. We enjoyed How to Build a Pipe Organ, such cool programs. And if you were around this Saturday, there was a wolf in Belmar at the Taylor Pavilion. That was really wonderful to learn about that program. And there was about 150 people there that came to that event, so it was a real success. So they will have some more animal events. We have penguins coming to Belmar coming up. Pat Roddy is playing October 5th at 5 p.m. at the library lawn. And then they're getting ready for the Diwali November 9th at the Taylor Pavilion as well. There's so many things happening at the Belmar Library. They did have a pre-construction meeting for the window replacement. That will be happening. And will likely be happening in January. So they're going to cover up the window that isn't being used, and hopefully it won't be too freezing cold, and they can keep the top floor of the library open on those days. But we'll keep you in touch about that. And I think that's all. Oh no, I have one more thing. I've been looking into the veterans banners for our hometown heroes. And have been in contact to hopefully have this adopted by resolution, that we can have a Hometown Heroes program to honor our veterans. And we're just talking about criteria, whether it's people who are currently living in Belmar or who have passed who lived in Belmar, or whether we can include those who have moved out of town. So I will let you know more as, and hopefully by next meeting, we'll have a resolution and we can talk about it. Thank you.
Councilman Levis?
Thank you, Mayor. We had a Harbor Commission meeting last Tuesday. One of the things, I'd like to thank Jim, our borough engineer, for giving a very detailed explanation of the fuel knock, and I'm happy to see that those repairs are going to get underway quickly. We took a look at some of the numbers, preliminary numbers for the Harbor Commission and the boat ramp. We're down about $3,000 year over year to now. The weather certainly is not helping, but hopefully when strike pass season kicks in full gear, we should see those boat ramp numbers jump back up a little bit. The other thing that was discussed at the Harbor Commission meeting was revisiting some of the parking spaces for the marina, looking at possibly adding a few more reserved spaces for marina tenants, possibly expanding that into the lot we have over by the Arts Council. So it's just something that's on the Harbor Commission's mind. It'd be useful when we're looking at our parking ordinances, either at the end of this year or next year, to take a look at that and make sure that we're meeting the need for the marina parking as well, and seeing where we need more spaces. And that's really it I have for the marina and for an update. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have anything to report because all these council people work so hard going to all these meetings and keeping us all posted on everything that's going on in town. So I'm going to move on to the public session for the resolutions that are on the agenda. If anyone would like to make a comment, please come up, state your name and address.
Hello, everybody. Sharon Mahoney, 800 Main Street. So this doesn't have to do specifically with the tax abatement issues with the properties that were brought up. But I do have a question. Talking about affordable housing in the town, right? I know we have a certain amount that we have to do by law, right? Why are we not finding property for a new building for our seniors? I think that needs to be a priority. There are people who are living in town, living in a building that's falling down. They're looking to spend so many, like thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix a building that really should be knocked down and find them somewhere new to stay. I think that really should be a priority for us right now.
I mean, it's something that, we agree, I think, with your assessment. I don't know that we have the control over that property.
But you have control over the property, sorry.
I don't know, so I'm not gonna go that route, but, it's definitely something that we agree that should be done.
But you have control over property that a developer comes in and says, we want to do something with this property. And you're like, well, actually, we like to find property for our seniors. So you have control over that, right?
Yeah.
Sharon, thank you so much for bringing that up. I had mentioned the same thing to our borough attorney as well, and he had mentioned that that would have to be talked to with, is it Jen Dean? Jen Dean. We can't discriminate who is going to get those affordable housing units.
Understood.
So that's something that we need to look into, how that would go about in the plan. Is that, Mr. McGill, would you say that's fair?
That is fair.
Okay. But absolutely, that's something that, that should be looked into.
I mean, not that government, not that we want to put eminent domain on the table, but, the seniors, I mean, that building is hurting. We've all heard, Maria, you and I probably the most in this room right now, have heard the stories, seen the pictures of what those places look like. Aside from the commissioners who all need to be replaced, the executive director who needs to be replaced, the superintendent needs to be replaced. The harassment going on, the abuse of power going on there, everything, it's really a sad state to force these seniors to stay in this building when they're already being treated with respect. So if there's a way for us to find property in this town to build a new building for them, I think that really needs to, be at the forefront versus, some of this other new stuff coming into town. Affordable housing, I understand that, that, I'm not trying to say, replace that with this, but like, we really do need to, give our seniors a fair shake here. That building is,
I think you're preaching to the choir here. I think we'll.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do know a year or two ago, that was one of the developers did say that they were gonna, I think that was part of one of the plans. It was one of the plans that was way too big anyway, but that was part of the project, was to build a new building for the senior, so the new senior building. But it has to also be in agreement with the developer, correct? I mean, they have to want to do it.
Yeah, that was the same one with the ferry.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a large project. But I remember being excited by it. The building looked very beautiful.
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with that project, so I don't really know what you're talking about.
It was a couple years ago.
But, right now there are 3 developers in the process, and, their proposals are being made and evaluated. I don't think any of those proposals have that component in it, but, yeah, it would have to be by agreement.
And then, how would it work? Would it have to be a federally funded building also, like this one is? Or can it be a privately, like, how does that work?
Yeah, I suppose you could have some senior component in the development, but this senior building is not ours. I actually have a call into John Bonella, who's the attorney over there, to figure out just what the status is of that property. On a different issue, actually, Sharon's question about the vote, which is still ongoing. But Mr. Bonello's out of the country until Friday, so he'll get back to me probably next week sometime, and we'll work out that vote issue, and we'll have a better grasp on exact nature of that property, who owns what, who has what rights, but it does seem to be a residential property, that's for the boat consideration. In case anybody doesn't know, I'm working with Chief Scott regarding a boat that they're keeping over there. Doesn't seem like a big issue, but it's an issue that we're looking into nonetheless. So that's ongoing as well. Not as important as housing for seniors, but they do dovetail, strangely enough.
Okay, thank you. Any more comments on the resolutions? I don't see any.
Right there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Gene Kramer, Fourth Avenue.
Let's get you the mic.
Gene Kramer, actually, Fourth Avenue. I took a brief look at the payment of bills list. A couple of things kind of jumped out at me. Verizon Wireless, apparently we're paying them about $4,000 a month for their services. I mean, if you run the numbers of $4,000 a month times 12 months, we're probably paying Verizon about $50,000 a year for them to attack us down on the beach. The other thing that bill that was paid, I noticed that we are no longer buying our electric commodity from Jersey Central Power and Light Company. We're buying it from a company called Direct Energy Business. And I guess my question there was, is that the decision with the energy commodity, the purchase of the electricity for the borough, for the streetlights, for the buildings and so on, is that being left up? Is that those decisions being made by our purchasing agent?
I don't have a direct answer because I don't recall seeing any paperwork or anything coming through changing that. So I'd have to go back and talk with Mr. Kane, and we have to speak to the purchasing agent to find out how long that has been in effect. And if it changed, when it changed, and why it changed. So we can definitely get back to you on that. We'll look into it.
Yeah, I checked last year's billing for the same period, and at that time it was Jersey Central Power and Light Company.
All right, well, we'll find out why it's changed.
Okay, thank you. Resolution 2023-207. This is a resolution authorizing submission of a boardwalk preservation fund grant application. I saw this in the newspaper, and this is from the governor's office. He expressed making an allocation of state funds available to preserve boardwalks in New Jersey. My question there is, would that, if we do get a grant, I'm not sure what the grant would be for, would that money be a grant to the beach utility?
I think it depends on what we would be looking to do. For example, I don't know, I'd have to ask Mr. McGill, if it was a boardwalk repair, is that a town?
When you get a grant, it's going to be earmarked for some project, so that money has to go to that project. Whether or not it ultimately impacts the would that money have come out of the beach utility anyway? I don't know. It all depends on what it's earmarked for.
I agree. It's really, again, even if it goes to the beach utility, the whole idea is to get the work done, whether it's billed to the utility or to the borough. But we'd have to actually look into that figure out what it is we actually would want to do. This is just allowing us to have a resolution basically, on the books so that we can file a grant application.
Okay.
So this is just the first step.
I understand.
Process.
Do we have some ideas as to what funds would be used for? The reason I'm asking, 6th Avenue, we never did install this summer season, never installed the bathroom trailers there.
Right.
And there was a DEP issue. I guess my first question was that DEP issue associated with the 6th Avenue bathroom trailer? Has that, number one, been resolved?
Well, that wasn't a DEP issue. That was just the bathroom trailer that was supposed to go. One of the trailers that was supposed to go on the beach could not be moved from the marina because it had a broken axle. It just was incapable of being moved. So that had nothing to do with the DEP.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we did have a issue.
We have an overall issue with the DEP because they don't like the fact that the trailers are on these big concrete slabs, which they are saying are permanent structures. And we have been working with them prior to the summer, and I don't think we've heard too much from them during the summer, but I'm assuming it's going to come around very soon that we're going to have to, dig into that issue again about the trailers on the beach. So it will come about. We haven't heard from them yet, but our goal really is to try to get it to the point where we can have facilities on the beach that will meet with the DEP's approval. That's really the goal of Mr. Kane and I and Jim Morris, the engineer, to really, that's our goal, to get to that point. So we haven't figured out in total how we would do that because we need to speak to the DEP about a few things. So but we're going to start working on that again.
So possibly any grant that we may receive.
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I don't know that it would hurt to put that in, but we have our grant writers, I think, looking into it. Maybe Mr. Kane.
Yeah, that's correct, Mayor. It's pretty vague. The state allocated $100 million to this boardwalk preservation fund. And what this does, this allows us to apply at a future date. The grant writers are trying to figure out exactly what can be utilized as part of this grant. Whether we can put permanent bathrooms on. The whole thing with DEP is nothing on the beach, which is why they consider the bathroom trailer sitting on the slab, permanent structures. But there's bump out areas where the bathrooms currently go in sitting on existing pilings that we're gonna try to figure out, maybe we can build a structure on those existing pilings. So that's all the stuff the grant writers, engineers, and mayor and council are trying to work on for a permanent result down the road with DEP.
Yeah. The concrete on the beach is a violation, period. That was a violation of the CAFRA permit that was issued to the borough. So we have a pending permit violation. Everything that was permitted by the DEP, including the boardwalk, including the pavilions, is elevated on piles. I think we have discussed this at one meeting months back, that we are currently in violation and we have to mitigate it somehow. Actually, the reason, Mayor, I'm bringing this up is this whole business with Verizon, the critical path here is that the CAFRA permit, that we're going to have to go, Verizon's going to have to go make an application to the DEP for a CAFRA permit, okay? And we're going to be put in a position where we're going to have to try to persuade the DEP to deny that permit. There is no other pathway. You can look and hire all the attorneys that you want, but the federal government is on the side. They have a permit from the Federal Communications Commission. The only strategy that we can work at is by getting the support of the DEP and to convince them that they should deny the permit. And there's a lot of work to be done there, including coming up with substantive arguments, okay, to convince them that they should not issue the permit. We're going to be in a very difficult position if we have outstanding permit violations. I can only encourage you is to take care of that as soon as you can.
So let me just weigh in on that. Mr. Orris has worked very hard in doing some research, because one of the other aspects of the concrete blocks is that if a structure was there prior to CAFRA coming into existence, then it would be essentially grandfathered in and not subject to the CAFRA permit. So we have been doing research to try to find out if any of those concrete slabs were in places where previously, prior to CAFRA, there existed a structure. And that's something that is ongoing, and we're trying to see. And I think the DEP was kind of like working with us a little bit on that to see. There was lots of.
Yeah. And they basically agreed that 4 of the 6, 4 on the south end were there previous, that they agreed to.
That was when they said, who knows what they'll say when we go to them now. But that was a little bit of a strategy we were trying to use to try to at least not have to, deal with a replacement of all of them, and have CAFRA permits of all of them. To get to your other thing, and I'm going to weigh in with Katie on this one, because Verizon has sued the county, as you probably know, and have filed a complaint against them for the same thing that pretty much they did against Belmar, but there are a few other things thrown in there. But I think, and I didn't read it in detail, but I think one of their arguments is that the CAFRA doesn't apply to them. That is also superseded by the FCC regulations. I'm not taking any position on whether they're right or wrong, but that's another avenue they're trying to pursue to get these towers built. So I just throw that out there, but it wouldn't surprise me if they argue that. They're going to argue it, and it'll be interesting to see what the court does on that. But you're right, and everything you said is absolutely correct. That if they say the CAFRA applies and the Verizon doesn't have has to comply with it, then we definitely need to come up with arguments as to why they shouldn't issue the CAFRA permit.
Yes.
Right?
I'm trying to keep my mouth shut about some of this until the next meeting, because I think there's a lot more there as far as legal strategy goes. We're certainly aware of all the issues around CAFRA, you're right. And there's also a new rule coming down from Fish and Wildlife that also will have some impact here. And I sat in on that webinar this week or last week, within the last 2 weeks. And I'm talking with Peter Lugo, who's our telecom attorney, about that and how it might pertain to us. So I know tomorrow is the deadline to intervene in that case. So tomorrow there will be more news on that front, and I'm reluctant to say anything else here now.
So as we learn things, we will bring them, out at our council.
Happy to talk about
one. Know what's going on. Okay?
Resolution 2023-210. This is the redevelopment agreement for Eastport. If you have that in front of you. Page number 8.
Let me just see if I have that on. I don't know if it's included in our documents. was that included in our packets, the actual agreement?
Yeah, on the first email.
I'm looking online, but I don't. Yeah, I see it, I see Exhibit A, but I don't see it.
It's under,
Was
are
it
you
in here?
on the website?
Yeah.
It's under the miscellaneous.
We have it here.
I learned something.
Well, she's got the resolution. He's talking about the agreement.
Yeah, excuse me, I just have a small correction
Okay.
that has to be made.
No, I need the actual agreement, that's, right, you can make a comment. I have it memorized, so don't worry about it.
This is the age-free page
Yes.
agreement. But on page number 8, it kind of jumps out, I mean, it's happy to be there. It says, the project will also consist of the following components. Number 1, 12 diagonal public parking spaces facing east on 6th Avenue that will be available to the public. Cross off the word east and substitute west.
Right. That's obvious. If they face east, we're in trouble.
Oh, I'm sorry. Resolution, this is a question. Resolution 2023-212. Resolution authorizing amendment to monitoring well access agreement. Where is that location?
Okay, I'm gonna ask Mr. McGill to weigh in on that one.
Right, so we were contacted by Brockerhoff Environmental Services. They have been using our monitoring wells at the marina. We have monitoring wells down there for our own purposes. And they are doing, or in charge of the remediation at the parking lot over here at the plaza. Back years ago, there was contamination found, believed to be emanating from what was then the Freedman's building. They went through a remediation process in that parking lot. If you recall, there was some kind of mechanical that was doing that remediation that was running all the time. That's now gone. But what's going on is monitoring the site. And these wells that we have are called Sentinel wells. And what has to be done is they have to take samplings periodically to comply with DEP requirements. Now, apparently, Brockerhoff had an agreement with the town to do this, and I think it was a simple direction that they could do this. When I was speaking with them, I was under the impression that there was a written agreement. However, they couldn't produce it. We don't have it. April, what you sent me over, which is not it. That's our agreement with our people. So what we need to do, I think, is to put into place a written agreement, simple in form, to include what generally is considered boilerplate, but is very important, such as requirement for insurance, indemnification, and just, put in a duration clause. They're going to go till February, and then they're done. And so we need to put that into place. They're in the marina. Exactly, I don't have a map where they are. What happened was there were 2 wells that they were using. Our environmental company apparently decommissioned those wells and dug 2 other wells. The purpose, or the reason why they did that, I don't know. But when Brockerhoff showed up on on site, they noticed that there were different wells, they didn't have permission to use the new wells specifically. So they reached out to us to get permission, not being inclined just to say, go ahead. We said, you know, we'll put it in writing, they agreed, and that's it. So that's what we're doing.
Okay.
There's no impact to borough property here, no plume or anything? That we're
Well,
aware of?
no, the wells are already there, and they're just going to use them. However they do sampling, they'll use those wells to sample. So I suppose they'll be extracting some groundwater or something, testing them and sending the results to the DEP.
Yeah. Is that within the mall area?
Within the,
The Belmar Mall?
no, it's at the marina. I don't know, Billy, do you have any idea where they are?
I know one is by the paver walkway to the south of Marina Grill, and I think, I'm not sure where the other one is.
They're just nondescript hatches in the ground that you wouldn't notice if you didn't know what it was.
No, they're just small manholes.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned, you may want to look out for this, because I believe the paving of the Belmar Mall is the responsibility of the borough. That whole area between what was Freedman's and what's now 10th Avenue Burrito, that whole hit and up to what used to be the Acme Supermarket, that was all dug up at one time. And maybe you've noticed when you're pulling from 8th Avenue that the asphalt has deteriorated exactly where it's stripped from east to west. The asphalt is breaking up where that area was remediated. Apparently it wasn't consolidated and rolled correctly before paving it. I'm not sure whether we have any remedy there or who's responsible for that. At one time, it was Beach House Brewery. I think they assumed the responsibility for the remediation of the borough's property.
Just a thought that I had while you were saying that, there's still, we're still waiting for the state to do the construction of the new crosswalk at the senior building. And I think from their plans, what I remember, that area may be under reconstruction based on what they have planned to do. So we'll look at that, and and I think we need to get back in touch with the state and find out like what year they're going to do this. This is like the 3 years we've been I know I got the letter saying what they were going to do at the beginning of the year, and I was like, oh great, this is going to be done, and we haven't heard anything from them. So we need to make a call and say like, what century is this going to actually happen, and is it going to happen? So we'll follow up at that, but we'll also look at what it looks like.
You may want to take a look at the paving.
Yeah, and the paving, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
That's the end of my comments.
Okay.
On the resolutions.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment? Please come up, state your name, your address. This is on the resolutions. No? I don't see anyone else.
Can I have a motion to close the public session?
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the resolutions as listed on the consent agenda?
Motion.
Second.
Councilwoman Donovan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Kinney?
Yes.
Mayor Buckafusco?
Yes.
Councilman Rondanero?
Yes.
Councilman Levis?
Yes.
All right, we don't have any ordinances for tonight, so now we're open for public session. Just please remember to state your name and address before you speak.
Good evening. Jim DeOria, 217 8th Avenue. I'd like to preface my comments with the following information. I am a political independent. I have voted for both Republicans and Democrats in this town, so these are not political comments. I've attended most of the council meetings this year, and I have observed way too much tension, animosity between the residents during the public session and the mayor, council, and administration. This situation has created an environment which is counterproductive to both sides and to the borough as a whole. As a result, I'd like to suggest some rules of engagement. First, residents need to better focus their comments or questions. This administration, as well as the prior one, has not implemented a time limit on comments, which is their right. Residents should not abuse this privilege to have unlimited time to speak during the public session. Before presenting issues to the council, the public should ask themselves, will their question comment make Belmar a better place to live and work? There should be no personal agenda, trick questions, or shaming of individuals. At the same time, the administration should do a better job of communicating. All questions, comments from residents that can't be answered immediately should be logged in by someone in the administration and followed up so that we get answers by the next meeting. The same login system should be used for phone calls, emails, or voicemails. Residents are entitled to a response to all questions, comments they have. I hope that both sides will implement these changes so we can work together to make Belmar a better place to live and work. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Vicki Renner, 160th Street. The first thing I came for tonight was, there was different sites about Belmar, that you can join.
Can I ask you just to move close to the mic? Okay, thank you.
Okay, and we were discussing, or someone brought up with all the rescues that have been taking place, and obviously what happened in Manus Farm was dreadful. And someone had suggested at one time maybe getting those, the rings to throw in off the boardwalk, maybe to put them back. And when I was little, I remember we had ropes that went from the beach out to the ocean, and they had buoys on them, and they had anchors to sink them, and it was a designated space so that when the lifeguards sat there, you swam between the ropes. And if you got in trouble, or a wave came, and they'd say, well, at least you could grab onto the rope. And many people did. So when I put that on the computer, somebody said that they brought it to the council's attention. I don't know if they were talking about Belmar or another town. I'm not sure where they were referring to. But they were told that somebody strangled by a rope, which I've never heard that in my life. So what I'm saying is we might want to go back to something that worked and check it out. It was safe. The lifeguards didn't spend the whole time blowing the whistle away from people, kept going, they go on the rocks, I'm on 12. Half the day is them trying to get them away from the jetty. So if you have to go between a certain space, I think that would work, and maybe something worth looking into. I just wanted to comment what you had said about Verizon, about the bill paying, and maybe we should be the first town to change our service away from Verizon. And if all the other towns follow, maybe that will give them a hint that they were not for what they're doing. Also, Councilman Kenny brought up the Shade Tree Committee. Which council person represents, so you're Shade Tree, and which council person is on the planning board or the board of adjustment?
I'm on the planning board.
You're the planning
Me
board?
and Mayor on the planning board.
Okay.
There's no council representative on the zoning board.
Okay, so, I was on that for a very long time, all three boards. And, with the Shade Tree, when you were granting on the planning board and the board of adjustment, and you come to an agreement and you're going to approve it. In the Better Angels, they had discussed many moons ago what the communication problems were, and one of them was when the planning board agrees to something, or board of adjustment agrees to something, and you have stipulations granted to that person coming, the applicant coming before you, there's a list. And we always said, where does that list go? That paper that says you must do A, B, C, D. And it's not just your certificate of occupancy. It might say, if it's a shared driveway, it might say this or that. But if you notice in town, with all the redevelopment that we have had, especially on residential homes, they're not into maintenance. So the way you don't have maintenance is you chop all your trees down in the yard, and you put rocks, and that's the new look. And with that, you're losing with every tree X amount of gallons of water that each tree drinks, and that's why our streets have more water and then people don't understand why we're flooding. So my suggestion is what they had come up with a while ago, is for the boards, when an application comes and it's granted with stipulations, that they be listed in the file. And it is someone's job, whether you're going to make it the code enforcer or whoever in town is going to go through that list and check off everything on that list that was agreed upon that gave you that approval. And we haven't done that, ever. And I know, April, you're probably more familiar than anybody, than you were there for many moons.
Right, it's in the resolution if there's any conditions that have to be met.
Correct.
And it's reviewed by the zoning office and the construction department throughout the permit process. And if it's a large scale project, then the town engineer is involved.
Okay, so say it is a piece of property, just because of the tree thing you brought up. Say someone comes in, they're gonna get a house, they got this and that, but years ago, if you took down a tree, you had to replace it somewhere in the borough when you came for, an addition or whatever. And so the trees were supposed to be put back in town so that we would continue to have trees.
Right, so as it stands right now, if you have to take a tree down or want to take a tree down, you have to get a permit, and that permit has to be approved in order for you to be able to take a tree down. So I do know that exists.
That's
And
for,
then-
the trees that are between the curb and the sidewalk. We don't regulate the trees that are on private property.
Okay, so like on my street, there was a huge tree in the front of the lawn. It came down, they chopped it down, and the front of the yard got rocks put down, which we had an ordinance against rocks on the front lawns, and then I guess it got taken away by someone who took that away, because we didn't want to look like lava. So they, but it came back somehow. So this huge tree was on private property, and when you say you have to get a permit, and you also have to pay $10 if you want to plant a tree. Remember that fiasco? There was like a little crazy thing at the lake that they didn't have a $10 permit. How many permits has someone come to and paid $10 to plant a tree? Do we get like a lot?
Well, again, it's just for when you're replacing the ones between the sidewalk and the curb, and we do get a few.
Yeah.
But the other one that you were talking about was a memorial tree at the lake, which we haven't had anyone do that program since then.
Yeah, I guess my point is, I don't think many people know if you go to plant a tree that you owe $10 to the town. And I don't know whose job that is to actually enforce that, who's watching all the trees in our town, but something's mixed up again. Somewhere there's a glitch that they come down, they wipe them out of the property, the new houses go up, and we don't get them put back. So somehow, if they're not gonna put it back on the property, if that's an agreement, then they should be planted in our parks. When we made a tree city, we had a couple hundred trees donated to the lake, and then the hurricane wiped them all out. So that was that, and then which council person is in charge of community policing?
I didn't hear what you said. Could you talk a little louder? I can't.
Which council person has been designated to be in charge of community policing?
Chief. I think it's the chief.
Okay, that's a great answer, because no one knows it exists, and it has fallen to the wayside like I've never seen. I started that thing. It was designed to be fantastic. Many of the questions that come out at the town meetings would be resolved if it worked the way it's supposed to. And if the residents knew where they were, I would be happy to go over with anyone that you want to assign to it, to implement it and get it back, because that's how you got the bike patrol and get grants. You can do a lot of things for it. And the last thing was, someone mentioned to me, and I just want to make sure, they said it's a rumor, so I just want to clarify, that there's going to be an ordinance to get rid of gas lawnmowers. Is that true?
No.
No, okay, so clarify that to the world, it's going around town.
We're gonna get rid of gas cars. We're not gonna get rid of cars.
Okay, so that's good, because it's going around town, that there will be no gas lawnmowers permitted, and
No,
now it's
lawnmowers is not.
clarified that's not true. Okay, thank you.
This is a quick one. Jim DiOrio again. The Shade Tree Commission on the next meeting on October 12th has on their agenda a recommendation to plant trees when a developer comes in, levels the lot, builds a new house.
Right.
So they are working on it, and I know
They can
that.
only plant trees within the area that is borough property.
Right, but they're.
Between the sidewalk and the street. Yeah.
But new construction on 7th Avenue and the first aid station, 6 new homes, I haven't seen a tree yet. So the Shade Tree Commission is addressing that.
Okay, good. That gentleman got up first. That's okay.
Hi, I'm Barry O'Sullivan, I live at 96 Fifth Avenue. I just moved here in June, and I'm right across from Silver Lake, especially that big lawn there, and noticed pretty quickly that there's a serious goose problem. I got a letter from the local state senators welcoming me and asking if I had any questions, and I did ask about that. And they referred me to the USDA Wildlife Division, which I thought was gonna send me something saying it's protected, you can't do anything. Instead, they sent about a 20-page, which I forwarded to you, remember, telling me how bad this situation is, how they defecate 1.5 pounds per goose per day, that causes respiratory illnesses. It's not just a matter of being a pain in the neck. It's not just a matter that I can't bring my grandchildren around to the playground because of it, but that it's a serious health issue, and that it's up to the township to get rid of them. So I remember sending something, you said you were gonna put an RFP out for dogs, which is one of the main ways that they get rid of geese, is through what they call harassment using dogs. So I wanna know what's up with that. And the second thing, just to let you know, there has to be an education aspect to this, because I myself am a wildlife lover. Initially, if I saw people harassing geese, I would just say, what's wrong with that? We had my son's dog for a couple of weeks who would chase the geese, which they recommend. When my wife was with the dog, some woman jumped out of a car and accosted her and said, "You can't do that, what are you doing, that's illegal." So besides the fact that we have to do something to get rid of them, you have to put signs up or something around the lake explaining what's going on, and explaining that these geese are not some gentle wildlife that you have to leave alone, but they are actually deadly, seriously, besides being a nuisance, and that it's the right thing to do. I mean, as the Wildlife Division said, they're not native, they don't even migrate anymore, and they can't be here. So I'm just wondering what you're doing with them, and if you could also try to educate people of why you're doing it.
Well, just so you know, the RFP is out actually right now. I believe the returns are like October 5th. We're waiting, so we do have it out there to see if we can hire a company with water collies to chase the geese away. That's not the total answer, unfortunately, and the Environmental Commission, I know Katie wants to come in on this, but it's not the total answer, because we also need to do something with the area around the lake, and I'll turn that over to you.
The Environmental Commission and now the Silver Lake Committee has been working very hard and putting a lot of hours in. In fact, I was up this week over at Monmouth University talking to some of their scientists up there, because what experts keep telling me and telling all of us is that while harassing the geese does startle them, that they come back and come back. And so we want a more holistic problem. And the thing is, and what I've discovered about a lot of the issues at Belmar in general, she starts scratching them, all of a sudden it's like, all these things come up. And so one of the things we've been talking about is that Silver Lake has very high, it had a lot of algae this year. It had high levels of nitrogen and phosphate and all these other things. And so we're looking into, the team over at Mount University is coming to test for that. And we'll be getting recommendations to us based on that. And we're also looking and talking to different landscape architects and other experts who can provide a long-term solution that will not only discourage the geese permanently from being here in different ways, either because they don't like, for instance, longer plants underneath their feet. Is feet the right word? Sure. But also they like to be able to see direct paths to the lake. They don't want to be able to not spot any potential predators. So there are all these different ways that not only you discourage geese, but you discourage flooding. There's wave abatement, so that's great for us here. And it also brings down all those chemicals and algae population in the lakes, and then you get more fish and fewer midges and gnats and all those things. It's a lot healthier and it's better for the town in a million different ways. I'm hoping soon to present a comprehensive report of all of our research and our recommendations to the town and to all of you really soon. And like I said, we've been working really hard on that, so we are aware of the problem. I will tell you that when I talked about the algae side, not the algae side, the algae and other issues, most of those scientific experts said that the geese alone are almost definitely not the cause of that. They're not helping, but they're not the cause. So there's that.
Well, the experts from the USDA Wildlife Division say they are the main cause of it, and that they're not only causing the algae, but they will eventually kill all the fish in that lake if they continue to stay there.
Sure.
I've counted over 100 geese on that lawn, and that lawn is also used by the schools. After school, they have the soccer clubs going out there, running back and forth on that lawn. They have camps there. You know, on the 4th of July, they had the fireworks there. These poor people came out in the dark and put their blankets down to watch the fireworks. They had no idea what they were putting their blankets on, what they were bringing home. It's, you know, it is more than just a nuisance, and there are other things that they suggested, but they're really not practical. There is some kind of grape oil you can put in all the vegetation. They won't
Yeah,
need it.
it's
But
the
every
powder
time-
Kool-Aid.
Yeah, every time it rains, you have to reapply it. It's not, they even talk about putting a net on the lake, which again is not practical.
No.
But the dogs are not a great solution because there is maintenance, you have to come back, but something has to be done with them. Again, it's not just a nuisance and stepping in it, it is a danger. So I appreciate everything you do with that. And again, just to let people know what you're doing with signs. They have signs now about the algae, don't eat your fish. Soon they're just gonna have a sign saying, don't bother fishing because no more fish in the lake.
Right, and we plan on addressing that far beyond this stuff, right? But we are, like I said, very well aware of these issues and working very hard to resolve them for the long term.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am Susan Giordano. I live on 6th Ave, right by the lake. This has to do with the day of the Belmar race. As I say, I am a year-round resident, and I was quite shocked and angry as a taxpaying resident. My car was ticketed and towed in front of my house. It happened at 5 a.m. All my neighbors were out. They were ticketed also. Unfortunately, my car was the first to be towed. I approached the tow truck driver. He said it was the police. So I went over to the policeman and he said, ma'am, you know, we do this, and every year, the cars are never ticketed and towed on the residents. So I went to go get my car, and when I come back, the street is lined with outsiders parked in the same spot that my car was totaled. I felt awful. I called the police and I asked them, what are they gonna do about the cars? And my car was ticketed and towed. I got a ticket, which I can't even read. I tried reading it, I don't understand the date, and then the towing fee was $125 from Bennett Towing. So, all my neighbors too agree that this has never been done before. And it would be nice to have someone ring a doorbell or have a letter in advance saying, please don't park there. So I don't know if you can explain to me what happened this year. What was the, logic around this, motivation of why, it was, and to.
I would have to sit with Chief Scott and
I had to pay
find out.
$125. Yeah, I went to the police station last week, and I asked to speak to her, and then the dispatch, they said, well, ma'am, I'm sorry, we're in the middle of the water rescue. So, I'm like, what do I do? So I have to
speak with her.
I don't know, maybe someone here can understand it, because I can't. I don't even know anything about that. So, so I don't know what.
I mean, I wish the council had the authority to just say, we're going to take away the ticket, but we don't have that authority. Again, you could go before the judge, municipal judge, and explain the situation, perhaps with your neighbors who also receive tickets. And
well, to my understanding, their tickets were taken care of. They went to the police station, and they were taken care of. But I figured I would wait and speak to town and council here
I
about.
don't understand what you said when you said they were taken care of. What does that mean?
They were taken care of.
They were paid, or they were?
No.
Dismissed.
Dismissed, thank you.
Yours wasn't, but other people's was.
Well, I didn't go with them, and I went because I figured I was going to approach with my ticket and my towing charge of $125.
I think the best course here is we'll just sit with Chief Scott and we'll find out what happened. And hopefully we'll be able to get back to you and at least explain what happened. Okay? That's,
Yeah, because I don't know why this year, what happened? Who told the police this year, ticket and tow?
I don't know. I don't know enough
Do you
about
know
what was
what
done in
happened?
terms of what
Why this
signage
year?
was put up or not put up. So we'll
Why
look
this
into
year?
that.
Do you know?
About the ticket in tow?
Yes.
We ticket in tow every year.
No. It hasn't happened.
Well, like I said,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm a resident there.
yeah.
And my next door neighbor's there 23 years. He said it's never happened.
I think we'll find out what happened, but if you want to contest the ticket, you should contact the court clerk and say that you want to contest it, and then she'll give you a court date, and then you could say pretty much what you just said here to the judge, and he'll decide whether or not the ticket should be dismissed or whether you have to pay the fine. Okay, but we'll try to find out what the procedural things are before that.
How do I make an appointment with Chief Scott? Or?
No, we will speak with her. Okay.
Okay.
If you
How do we
would,
get in touch?
yeah, I was just going to say, if you want to leave your name and address with April, maybe after the meeting, just come up and give her your name and address. If you have an email address, we'll take that also, so we can get back in touch with you by telephone.
Thank you.
Okay? All right. Claire?
Claire, 18th and D. My friends in Florida who are watching and have been watching the whole meeting, I'm asking you to read this. My husband and I want to thank everyone from Belmar who came out to honor our son, Corporal Carlos Gonzalez. We are so grateful to see the dedication, patriotism, and care everyone had to honor Carlos, from the police, the fire department, the mayor and council, and all the Belmar residents. It meant the world to have our son's name spoken and keep his memories alive. So proud to see Belmar has always been committed to honoring our veterans and the fallen. Belmar has a very important and dear part in my heart. I am a Jersey girl born and raised, and as a child, I always spent the summers in Belmar. My husband and I continued the tradition with our children. It was definitely a heavenly intervention to have his marker here in Belmar. Thank you, Carlos and Anna Gonzalez. Now, there's one other piece that came in that Anna doesn't know I'm going to read, but I'm going to read it anyway. You have no idea what this weekend meant, especially for me. Carlos would have been 40, and I was in a slump before our trip. Would he have gray hair? Who would he have become? This weekend got me out of that slump. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Let's get somebody who hasn't spoken yet. Go in the back.
Dan Lang, 14th Avenue. A couple of things. I've noticed that it seems that Randall's seems to be extending their outdoor eatery a little further out into Piano Plaza. Now, last year I asked about what's going to go on farmer's market, and you said, well, we'll have it on Friday nights at the Piano Plaza. It was an embarrassment for these guys. There's only 4 or 5 people there. Nobody bought from them. They were all bringing their own food. They wanted to hear the music. So, you know, if there was another day you can do it, use Piano Plaza. But, you know, you've got to, I wonder if the borough is asking for a rental fee from Randall's, because they're taking up a lot of space. The previous Democratic administration said, okay, go ahead and do it, but nobody's really put them under control. Because it just seems like they go out a little further, taking up more space. And also, when you brought up about the heroes, I know the Brigadier General of New Jersey National Guard. She would like to have a medal ceremony. So, if you think about it, it would be good for you, it would be boost for the borough, really something in that nature. So think about it. I have contacts with her. If you have any questions, I can get in touch with her. We can get all this set up.
Is there a time?
No,
Is
whatever.
there a time span?
And with the ceremony?
No, whatever the borough decides you convene.
It's not necessarily, you know, Veterans Day or.
I'll have to talk to the general and see what she says.
Okay.
But I think that going back to the farmer's market, if you're going to do it, do it on a different day where there's more space. You don't have people there listening to the music. You know, it would benefit the farmer's market vendors. People will be there to patronize them, to buy their food, buy their products. The rest of the time they just sat there and were twiddling their thumbs the entire time. Okay?
We'll definitely look into that.
Okay, thank
Also.
you.
Who else? One.
Thank you, Mayor. Sandy Caputo, Surf Avenue. First, thank you everyone for talking close to the microphone. It makes such a difference to us back here. I have a question, and maybe that's for over here. When something gets approved at the zoning or planning, does that developer then come back to the borough to negotiate pilot or tax abatement?
Well, in a, not in front of the zoning board. The zoning board has nothing to do with redevelopment. Redevelopment is a process where you can get a pilot if you were in a redevelopment area. So there's different different things going on with the boards, not in front of the zoning board. Zoning board, you come in, you ask for a variance, you're granted a variance, there may be conditions, that resolution goes over to the zoning officer, and when you look to get a building permit or a CO, they make sure that all those conditions are met. So the redevelopment process is a little bit, the planning board is a part of the redevelopment process. Redeveloper in a redevelopment area comes to the governing body, puts a plan in front of the governing body, and that goes to the planning board. Now, part of what the governing body does is enter into a developer's agreement. That developer's agreement could have a pilot in it. It may not, doesn't have to, could. Then it goes to the planning board for approval. So that part of it is worked out with the governing body, and then that development goes to the planning board, and the planning board makes sure that everything complies with the design criteria for the redevelopment area and in accordance with the redevelopment plan. So nobody really comes back after and negotiates the pilot. It's done up front. It's done only in the redevelopment. What will be, it's only done in reference to redevelopment applications. Yeah, it's not like something that people can show up after the fact and get.
It's not brought up at the meeting.
It's brought up in front of the governing body, it should be, yeah. See what happens is they come before the governing body and they put their concept in front of the governing body, and then they go into negotiations. If it's approved, it goes to the planning board, then they go into negotiations, and part of that negotiation, which is a developer's agreement, could include a pilot, okay?
So if I want to know if a developer got a pilot, I have to get the resolution, I have to get the paper, I have to find it there.
You would look in the redeveloper's agreement.
That would be at this meeting, Sandy. So at the planning board meeting, that wouldn't be negotiated there. There wouldn't be a resolution at the planning board meeting. It would be a resolution at this meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
The tax assessor also has the ability to identify all of the properties that have pilots. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so that would be a quick way to know. Basically, touch base with the tax assessor, and anyone who's got a pilot will be listed.
Thank you.
Okay? All right. Any other comments?
Sharon Mahoney, 800 Main Street. A few things. Regarding the library, Maria, thank you for bringing that up. It reminded me, I had a bunch of books that were at my mom's house, and she's like, get them out of here. So I said, well, you can't go to Wall, they don't want them, right? So I brought them to Belmar. They said, we're really not taking paperbacks, just for raising knowledge. They want hardcover books. However, they said, the little libraries are empty. And the books I had were like beach reads. So she goes, one down the beach is empty, so I took them all down there, filled them up. So if anybody's looking to get rid of books, look at the little libraries. This is about the fourth or fifth time I'm gonna bring this up. And Jody, you're the last person who went back and forth with me on this. Those they're called bike public work stands, right? I see them all over when I go anywhere else, right? County parks, I was just out in Chicago, there are all the places, municipalities out there. That's something, if the borough doesn't want to pay for it, we find sponsors. There are ways that people can fund them. They have, and then someone else recommended having the skateboard tools on them as well. So any place we can put them along the boardwalk, whether it be on the west side, the west side of the boardwalk, Ocean Avenue, anywhere, because I had a flat tire once. I had to walk my bike all the way home. If there was one of the stations there, I mean, maybe I could have pumped up a little bit to get home a little better. So can somebody please look into those again to see how we can get those, you know, and a few of them into town with Main Street, on Main Street, also Ocean Avenue. Is there a status of any ordinance against the boom cars? Where are we with that? Has anything come out from the state? Because the state,
There's nothing in the works right now.
okay, because the law's been passed by the state. Yes, you guys all got the email.
You're saying about the noise ordinance?
Correct,
For the cars?
Right, exactly. There was discussion about, and because it's approved by the state, but each municipality has to make their own ordinance and set their own fines in place, which includes towing, taking away the car, et cetera, et cetera. So nothing's been talked about, thought about that.
No, I recall, I think the state law had to do with, and I could be wrong, music playing on it.
Right.
And.
But you could expand on that.
We'll take a look at it. See
Okay.
what-
Yeah, I'll take a look
Yeah.
at that. I remember when that came down, I was gonna take a look.
I'll just make sure I keep my windows shut.
Sometimes I'll do that. Then another question I have, the ADA meeting that you mentioned, Jody, when is that?
Tomorrow.
Okay, so
No,
I
it's
don't
not.
see
Sorry,
that on the
Thursday.
calendar. Is it on
Thursday?
the borough calendar?
You know why? Because we have such a hard time with attendance on that, it's
Okay.
not a consistent time. There's not like the fourth Thursday of the month, it's just not. So I
So-
just made an announcement.
Okay, the reason I'm bringing this up is because this is another communication issue. I sent emails to town looking for a resolution, and I get no answer. So therefore, I'm taking your time to bring it up here, because nobody responds to me. There are several spots in town where the markings on the handicap spots are gone. I put DPW on copy of my email, and no response. So
I
when,
have a question though.
yeah.
Is the pole there with the sign on it?
Yes, but
Okay.
but nothing, there's a rule, a law that says you have to leave this spot open. People park there all the time and stay go, all the time. Because there's no marking in the law, in the thing that says, students don't pay attention to that, right? Over by the church, the markings are all gone, and you can barely make them out. So people don't see the pole here, they're just parking wherever they wanna park. People are parking and not getting tickets. I got a ticket right out here in August. There are no signs on this road out here that says no parking. There's no yellow curb. So I emailed Chief Scott, okay, went to the police, emailed Chief Scott, because I was not gonna go to court to fight the ticket. It shouldn't have been written in the first place. So she did get it dismissed for me, which I appreciate, but there still is no marking out there on this street that says no parking, and there should be. Because I can't imagine how many tickets have been, cars have been ticketed, and over, in the works to find that out, because really, mark the street. It's not that narrow. People don't know you can't park there. So ADA, there's a lot of spots in town. I asked, if the DPW has a list, which most municipalities, if they're doing the right job, they will have a list of all the ADA spots. They check them every year, check them every other year, whatever, to make sure that the markings are, like when Reed did some of the crosswalks and stuff, make sure they're painted properly, because, those people need that room, right, to get out. We have to respect that. On the same note, are there any signs now have been put up by the playground? I asked about the children playing signs, things like that. I don't see anything there either. So I know that some of the crosswalks have been there, but there's still no signs that say children at play, children playing, nothing. Anything in that regard happening?
Are you referring to specific areas?
Yeah, the playground on 8th Avenue, sorry. Yeah. So,
Okay, we'll look into that.
we need to look around town where there are, playgrounds, those signs should probably be up. That should be part of the protocol for when we put the crosswalks up, and, shouldn't we just assume that people, oh, there's children playing, but every other town has those signs up, so I think we just need to get a better job with the signage, because people just, I'm sorry, they're ignoring all this stuff. Oh, I should know that, but they just ignore it all the time. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Delver?
Couple of things. This gentleman that spoke about the geese and the general talk about it and everything. He said at one point that the geese are not native to this area. I've heard that myself. I don't know how much truth it is and everything. Tie this into something else, but they're not native to the area. They're a nuisance. I imagine they're a health hazard too. But the conversation is just circular. Get a dog to chase them. This, that, the other thing. Then 6 months, a year from now, if that long, we'll be back to it, and it'll be the same circle, on and on and on. There's an answer. It's a very easy answer. So easy that I could figure it out. You have to kill the geese. Now, Wait a second, now sit down, take it easy. You won't have to kill all the geese. I want you to know that. Because geese are animals and everything, they're birds, aves, whatever you call them. They're sentient beings. They understand things. With myself as a walker and everything, through the years, walking, I've noticed one bird, the crows. The crows know and communicate to the other crows where dangerous areas are and everything. And then those crows don't go in that area. They'll actually have a sentinel out and watching these areas for danger.
Well, that's because crows, you know, are the smartest birds of all birds.
Okay?
Scarecrows.
I don't know how you figure their IQ, but good enough.
Somebody has a PhD in it, somebody.
Yeah, we always have those people running around loose. All right. Now, once you start exterminating and everything, the geese will disappear from this area. And they'll stay gone for quite a while. They will come back too.
I don't know that that's,
Well, we have to try it.
it's not permitted. You need to get a permit from the federal government to get rid of geese. And you know what happens is, unfortunately, every year, the geese that aren't here lay eggs. And those geese grow up to be adult geese, and then they come back.
Man, we understand how.
Come back, so
It's something to do with sex.
So we'd be doing it. All the geese, we're not
Come on,
just doing the male
easy
geese,
does
or
it.
female geese, we're just doing them all. So, but we won't do that. And it's a never-ending problem, like many problems are.
It's not a never-ending problem, just give you the answer.
Can't.
However, let me move on.
What we do need, though, is coyotes. Coyotes are the natural predator of the geese. So that would be the only answer. Then we have another problem.
What about a dog? That is a vicious dog that will kill them. You hire people to have the dog chase them, correct?
Yes.
Okay? Hire the dog that's not gonna chase them, but when he catches them, he's gonna take care of business. Hire that dog.
We're coming up with a plan.
Yeah. You're good, you're coming up with a plan. I like it. Okay, now let's move on from that. Councilwoman, you mentioned the homeless.
Yes.
Okay. What is the population of the homeless tribe in this borough?
I just asked Chief Scott this. We did have two recent deaths.
Two?
Two recent deaths of the homeless population.
Two recent what?
Deaths.
Everybody
They
died.
passed away. But so that population is less than 5 right now that are regular Belmar, who we would say are, that they are here, this is where they consider home. And that's less than 5.
Less than 5?
That are
Well,
regular.
there's 2 less than 5 now because they died, right? So we're at 3?
Even if it's one, it's significant.
Right.
You know.
Why?
Because, well,
What is the public's, what is the
phrase in the
public's,
Bible, you know.
what do you owe the homeless?
Human beings, sir.
Correct, we understand that, that's not the, what not, we're talking about.
Let's be a
We
little bit more
understand.
respectful for people who died, I think that's appropriate, right?
It's not appropriate.
In this country, going back even beyond this nation, into colonial times, townships have had the ability to disallow somebody from coming into their town who could not earn a living or whatever. And even after we became a nation, that was still in force. Now, these people, you're using the word homeless. Well, that's a good word. They don't have a house. They're also something else. They're vagrants. That's a word. It's a legal word, and they qualify for the word vagrant. And we, as a township, have the ability to expel them, just like we should expel the geese, however we're gonna do
Mr.
it.
Gilbert?
Not execute
Yes,
them.
thank you. I would like to just intervene right here because we're going, we're kind of crossing the boundary here where I'm comfortable. I hope that's okay.
Comfortable?
That's
Why
right.
don't have a jacket?
Well, it's about our comfort level of when to talk and how to talk about human beings.
We need to get back onto a different
We're
topic. We
approaching,
don't
we're
have,
approaching 9 o'clock.
Why?
just
Why
for
would
the,
you said that a few meetings ago, we'll be here all night.
just for the
Well, we
record,
need
we
to
don't
speak
have
about
the right
things that
to
are
expel
relevant.
anybody
What?
because
Are you
we
saying I should
classify
speak,
them as a
Councilwoman?
vagrant.
Yes, I
Because
think,
you're uncomfortable, I should stop talking?
are you starting to
That's
be,
what you're trying to say?
let's be nice.
No,
Let's have a
I'm
certain,
asking the councilwoman.
let's have a
You're trying
certain
to tell
amount
me
of
I
decorum
shouldn't
here.
speak because you're
Mr.
uncomfortable.
Dilberger.
I would like to bring it back to Mr. McGill.
Yeah.
Well,
We need a certain amount of
Well,
decorum.
Mr. Dilberger is allowed to stand at the microphone and make his comments. We don't have to have a back and forth and asking questions and things of that nature, but certainly public comments are permitted. He can talk about his opinions on vagrancy if he wants. He's not correct that we can remove anybody because we think that they are vagrants. Okay, that we used to have loitering laws, they're not constitutional. People have the right to be where they want to be.
Point of
Okay,
order,
that-
point of order.
No,
Point
wait,
of order,
there's
Councilman.
nothing you
I
have
wanted you to know something.
There's,
I was doing something in Wall in August and everything, and I got a loitering ticket. Now.
you should
that
have bought it.
I had something else going on in my life that.
Okay,
that
but you
didn't
can
allow
get a
me to fight.
loitering ticket, it doesn't mean that,
It's baloney.
it is
But I
baloney.
But I still paid the fine. So don't tell me there was no loitering ticket.
No, if you decide to pay a fine, that's fine, okay? But we can't kick people out because we say that they're vagrants. We can't just put them in a car and drive what we do, when we take the dog to the farm. We can't do that, okay? So, I mean, we have to deal with these
The
people.
idea
We're
of
trying to.
can't, you know what, when you said I can't, my trade, you know what they said? Go down to the office and get your money and get out of here. You can't? Yes, you can.
There's a lot of things we
You
can't do,
won't
Mr.
do it.
Dilberger. There's a lot of things we can't do. You'd agree with me with that, man?
I don't agree with anything. See this?
Oh, okay, great.
Councilwoman, now you don't want me to speak because you're uncomfortable, is that it?
We're not having
Not going
questions.
there,
Mr.
please.
Dilberger, just make your comments and then
Well,
we're done.
the councilwoman started this stuff.
I would like to say,
Nobody's making you sit down. Can we just,
Why didn't you quiet?
she was uncomfortable. That's her
You
answer.
can get up and walk
That-
out too, you know, Councilwoman.
Now
Why
we're
didn't
getting,
you do that?
now we're getting beyond what we need to be at, okay? Because you can't be argumentative like this.
Whoa!
Yeah,
The argument
I
was
think we
started
need,
when she made the statement that I should stop talking. She's uncomfortable with what I'm saying. That started the
we
argument.
moved past that though, haven't we?
Say again?
We have moved past that, correct? We're past
No,
that.
apparently not. I'm still talking about it.
Well, you can talk about it, but don't ask anybody if they're uncomfortable. Just make your
No,
statements.
no, she said she was uncomfortable.
This is like Abbott and Costello, but,
It's not happening now. This is
it
important
kind
stuff
of
we're
is.
talking about.
It's not, but
Yes, it is.
it's your time, so
You're the
just,
one that's saying what's important. Don't tell me what's important.
okay, fair enough. Can we just finish? Take all your time, but just let's get to the point here.
The point is, I said they should be expelled from town.
Right.
They're vagrants.
Right.
That can be proven.
Okay, what's your next
We have the,
point?
hold
What's the next point?
Hold on, Mr. Mayor. We have the policeman right here. What's a vagrant?
Please don't ask any questions to the people. See, all questions come to the person.
Go ahead, ask the
So-
council. What's a vagrant? Go ahead and ask them.
It's not, we're not here to look in the dictionary and
I
find
actually
out.
don't know the
You need
legal
to make a
definition of
point.
vagrant, so.
We're trying to get
That's
you to the
my
point
answer.
where, what is it you're trying to say?
I'm trying to say they should be expelled from the town.
Okay, that's, All right, what else would you like to say after that?
I'm uncomfortable here.
Any other questions from
I
anyone?
think I'm gonna
Thank
change
you.
my shoes.
Okay,
Can I have a motion to close the public session and adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
Oh, second. All in favor?
I think we have.